Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Triple Threat Show. I am so glad to be with you. It has been quite a while, but regardless of all of that, today is a big day. The NBA draft is live right this minute. We will take you through each and every piece of that action. We have an NBA mock draft for us through the lottery. So that's picks 1 to 14. It's going to be a crazy night in the NBA. There's rumors of trades all the way up through that number 2 overall pick. The number 3 overall pick also being rumored to be traded. Guys being rumored to fall, like an Ace Bailey. How far will he fall? What about a guy like Maluwak out of Duke? How far will he fall? Will he fall out of the top 10? Risers in this draft, like Queen out of Maryland. Where will he end up? I've seen him as high as 6, as low as outside of the lottery at pick 18 to the Wizards. There are a lot of different options for how this draft is going to go, but I cannot wait to break it all down for you here. We have a lot to get into. We're going to start off with that mock draft as the NBA draft is about to kick off. We're going to show up here on the screen just our first mock draft right here. Again, picks 1 to 14 for you right here. Obviously, picks 1 and 2 pretty much set in stone. You have at number 1 Cooper Flagg, right? Cooper Flagg, the phenom, the young kid out of Duke. He has been the prince that was promised for this draft class for a very long time. He was in there at the beginning of the year as the guy that everyone knew was going to go first overall. He was at the Olympics. People say at the Olympic trials before the team was over there in France participating in Paris. He was playing against those NBA legends and holding his own. He is going to be an instant contributor to the Mavericks when or if they select him at number 1 overall, joining what will be a very stacked team. Anthony Davis is going to be back. Kyrie Irving just signed an extension. That means he's going to commit for probably the majority of the rest of his career. You have those two guys, as well as Daniel Gafford, who's going to be there after he signed an extension. You have Klay Thompson, that's still going to be there. You have a extra member of the backcourt in Derek Lively that helped lead this team to a finals appearance just 2 seasons ago. This is a Mavericks team that's going to be very dangerous, especially adding the best player in this draft, a guy that I think already in the NBA you can project to be a top 25 player. Now, nothing's official yet, but I would be shocked, absolutely mind blown, if anybody other than Cooper Flagg went number 1 overall to the Dallas Mavericks here in just a couple minutes. I bet they have their card filled out already. I bet Nico Harrison is ready to make his decisions right, prove to everybody he's not the worst GM in basketball by making the most obvious decision in the world. That one's going there. The next pick, I have Dylan Harper going here, and I think that's probably the obvious pick. He's the consensus number 2 overall in this class. The one thing that gives me pause here is the fit with San Antonio. The San Antonio Spurs went out, and they have Victor Wembanyama. They need a guy that can come in and be that passer, that facilitator for them. So they go out and they trade for De'Aaron Fox. Now they have Stephon Castle as well, the rookie of the year, the reigning rookie of the year over there. The Spurs have had the rookie of the year now a couple years in a row. It is most likely going to be Dylan Harper. And by all reports, they're sticking there to take him to add more depth over there. But I wouldn't be shocked if they went out and they got a big there, if they really did like one, or potentially even moved it away. We've seen the NBA trade market be very, very, very much, active before this draft. We've seen at least 3 major trades involving players. We saw a draft pick trade already with a second rounder where the Spurs traded to the Pacers for a future second, as well as some cash considerations in this year's draft. There is movement. GMs are talking. There could be insanity in tonight's NBA draft. But the real draft starts at number 3. At number 3, that is where the Philadelphia 76ers are up. And if everything in this draft cycle went normally, they would have taken Ace Bailey here. Ace Bailey, who played at Rutgers with Dylan Harper, is probably that 3rd best player in this class, if we're being honest, right? But things did not go well. Ace Bailey has been very vocal. He wants to be the star. He wants to be the number one option when it comes to basketball, when it comes to being the guy, right? And you aren't really going to be able to do that in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia 76ers have Joel Embiid when he's healthy, right? He's going to be the guy. They have Paul George if he's able to come back, be healthy, and even be 3/4 of what he was just a couple seasons ago. He is going to be a bigger star than Ace Bailey. You have returning Jared McCain, who's going to be a big star over there, right? You have as well a big star in Tyrese Maxey. That is 4 guys. You add Ace Bailey to that. I think that, that makes them a Eastern Conference title contender right there immediately. But they're not going to have to do that because it doesn't sound like he wants to play for the Philadelphia 76ers. So instead, I have them taking potentially the best athlete in this draft. That being one VJ Edgecombe out of Baylor. VJ Edgecombe is an explosion. That's what he is. He is going to add more depth to that backcourt with McCain coming off injury, with Maxey, who's coming off of kind of a down year despite playing through an injury there. Those are the guys, the depth that he's going to add to. It's going to be a very good 76ers team. You add Edgecombe in, it's going to do wonders for them. VJ Edgecombe at number 3. At number 4 here, this is one of the hardest picks to make because I could see the Hornets doing a million different things outside of LaMelo Ball, right? They don't really have a guy that you can turn to be that scoring threat. They have Brandon Miller, who I think could still turn into an offensive weapon. He's dealt with injuries. You have a couple of pieces that just have dealt with injuries or haven't been ready. I think you get maybe one of the more pro-ready guys in this draft you see here. I have him taking Con Kneppel out of Duke. I think his shooting and his ability to play defense is going to be huge. He kind of blended a little bit into the background on that Duke team, but he was an insane reason. He was a huge reason why they were able to be as good as they were in this draft. Without having a guy like Con Kneppel, despite having Cooper Flagg, despite having Malawak, despite having all of those incredibly talented players that Duke did, they would not have been one of the best players one of the best teams, I should say, in the history of college basketball, a top 3 team in the history of college basketball by just about every single advanced analytic right there. That is what Duke was. And a lot of that had to do with, yes, Cooper Flagg, but also the big 3 that they had in Con Kneppel and Malawak over there, right? That is a massive team. I expect all 3 of them to go in the top 10, but I think Con Kneppel is the next one off the board at number 4. He's just going to add a lot of big floor to the Hornets, and I think that's maybe the most valuable thing that they can get right now. At pick 5, the Utah Jazz are on the clock, and again, all of these picks could very well be up for trade. We could see just about anything happen in this draft, but the Jazz at number 5, I have them selecting Trey Johnson. Now, this was a tough one for me. I think they're just going to take whoever they like more between Trey Johnson and Jeremiah Fears. Those 2 guys, I think, add immediate help to a backcourt that could use a little bit of depth. I took Trey Johnson because of his shooting. I think he's one of, if not the best shooters in this class, and the fact that they could get him there at number 5, maybe there's a couple guys you take ahead of him, like Ace Bailey. Maybe you take Jeremiah Fears there, but there are a lot of really good things to like of that young kid, Trey Johnson, out of Texas, his shot making especially, and I think that's going to be amazing for this Utah Jazz team. At number 6, with the Washington Wizards on the clock, I have them selecting Ace Bailey. This is where he falls. Ace Bailey is the 3rd best player in this class. I feel pretty healthy. I feel pretty strong about saying that. Ace Bailey is one of the most just naturally gifted offensive players in this class right now, but there is a lot of stuff he still needs to work on. Put more effort on the defensive end. Sometimes he gets tired. Sometimes he just is a little bit sloppy with his handle when he's trying to drive inside, but he's got that prototypical size that you want for a wing, and he has the mentality that you want for a star. Now, that doesn't always work out, right? That's not something that's going to be an indication that 100% This guy is going to be your number one option 100% of the time. But the fact that he wants to be a star, the fact that he wants to go to some of those teams like the Hornets, like the Wizards, these teams that need a star, I think it's huge. And I think some of those teams are going to take notice and say, we can't let this guy get past us. We need to take Ace Bailey. So because of that, Ace Bailey falls to number 6. It is a bit of a slide for him, but he does not get past the Wizards. That right there, I just really love what he's going to be able to bring to the court as long as he develops properly. That is the key. He has to develop properly. That is by no means a guarantee, but getting him at 6, an absolute steal. This is where the slide for Jeremiah Fears stops. At number 7, we have seen them now trade away CJ McCollum. The Pelicans did. They traded him to the Wizards. They got back Jordan Poole. And I know Jeremiah Fears is the same position as Jordan Poole, but for a team that kind of feels like they're in the midst of selling off everything, we've seen rumors of the Pelicans trading away guys like Zion Williamson. We've seen rumors of the Pelicans saying everybody is for sale. They trade for Jordan Poole. I'm not sure he's going to be there at the end of this offseason. Maybe another team can go get him. He's not on the most expensive contract, and he's a guy that I think could help a winning team. Some people call him a shot chucker. He's not necessarily a shot chucker, but he definitely can get into those modes where he can chuck shots. But I think the Pelicans go out there. They just take best available there, and I think they take Jeremiah Fears out of Oklahoma, an incredible guard to really help shore up that backcourt for the Pels. Real quick, we do have some breaking news, some stuff that we expected. The pick is officially in. Cooper Flagg is the newest member of the Dallas Mavericks. We talked a lot about that earlier on here if you want to go back just about 10 minutes. But this is a huge, huge pick for them. I love this pick. Everybody should love this pick. This was a no-brainer. He's going to be an all-star, all-NBA level guy immediately. That's the kind of talent that we're talking here. And we could see potentially Cooper Flagg make this Mavericks team a contender in the West once again. But getting back to our mock draft, we are at pick number 8. And I think this is one of the more inflection point kind of picks in the draft. On my board, I have them taking the Frenchman Noah Essangue out of France. He is, of course, the first international prospect off the board. We have seen a lot of different players go through the international program into the NBA over the last couple years. The last few number 1 overall picks have been from the international game, which I think is why this draft has captivated my attention, and I think the attention of a lot of other people a little bit more than some drafts of recent memory. This is also just a much deeper draft class in general. I think there's 10 to 11 all-star level guys potentially, 3 or 4 all-NBA level guys potentially, but getting a guy at number 8 who can be the next international guy. He's big. He's great defensively. He can play both sides of the court. It's amazing what he's going to be able to do. I understand there's a lot of people calling for the Nets to go out and get a guy, again, like Derek Queen, like Malawak. Some of these guys that are going to fall a little bit later in the draft. Maybe the Nets, who have 5 first-round picks, use some of them to get a little aggressive, trade up, and get a guy like Ace Bailey, who's been rumored to like that spot for him, but also probably be the best potential pick for them that they could possibly get. So I think the Nets just take best available, and that's going to be Noah Essangue. At pick number 9, this is a really interesting spot for me. You saw there on that graphic, I have the Raptors selecting Derek Queen out of Maryland. Now, in a world where none of this matters, in a world where you just take the best player and you let it go, I have him taking Malawak out of Duke here. But there are some situations that you have to account for, like the fact that he is playing on a visa, Malawak is. And because of that, he actually cannot leave the country right now. And that is a risk that I'm not sure the Toronto Raptors are ready to take on a guy that, yes, has the size, has the defensive know-how, but still is relatively new to the game of basketball. He was an excellent defender. He is going to be a classic rim protector guy that could be huge and fits that spot. but I just don't know if they're willing to take a risk on a guy that might not even be able to play in Canada, at least during this current administration, or at least for these next couple months. It's going to be real tough. He can't leave the US right now. He might not be able to get back in. So it's not a great situation. So I think they pass up on Malawak here at number 9, and I think the Toronto Raptors instead take the next best center on the board and take Derek Queen. And that leaves the perfect spot for the Phoenix Suns, who traded to that number 10 pick with the Houston Rockets in that Kevin Durant trade. They go out and they get the guy that they want. They get the guy that I think is perfect for them in Malawak. We've been talking a lot about him. He's a guy that I think could go as high as 5 to the Jazz, but I think he falls here to number 10 to the Suns. He is a steal in this draft. Like I said, there's still some concerns with him. He's not necessarily a finished product. He's still new to the game of basketball. There is a lot that we don't know about how he is going to play. There's a lot that we don't know about how his game is going to translate offensively and defensively in the NBA, but he has the size. He can be a Rudy Gobert type, and the Suns did not get a center in the trade, which is something that they desperately needed. Now they can get the biggest center in this draft, get some rim protection, help shore up a defense that has been atrocious these last couple years. That is a perfect pick for them. I absolutely love that spot, and I think he finishes off the top 10 with the Phoenix Suns. Getting out the last couple of picks in the lottery here, we have at pick 11, the Trailblazers on the clock. And the Trailblazers are signaling that they want to shore up their defense a little bit. They have the offense with Scoot Henderson. They have a couple of guys that can step up and be that offensive weapon. They traded away Anthony Simons, so maybe they want to go more offense, but that signals to me that maybe they're focusing a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball. So as you see here, I have him taking Carter Bryant, who, yes, has a little bit of that two-way style in him, but he's not a guy that's going to light it up offensively. Coming out of Arizona, he averaged just over 10 points a game, or excuse me, just under 10 points a game, but his defense is something that I really like here. I think that fit in Portland is going to be amazing as Portland tries to compete here. Portland is trying to compete for a play-in spot, I should say, in the Western Conference, but it's not that unthinkable. You add Drew Holiday to shore up that defense. Denny Advia, who came over from Washington in a trade last year, was a huge star for them last year. You still have Scoot Henderson, who's going to be able to show up and play great basketball for you offensively and kind of be that engine. You also have now Drew Holiday, who might not be happy in Portland, but he's going to be playing in Portland after he was shipped out of there a couple of seasons ago. He comes in, and he's going to be the leader defensively. Big contract. Don't necessarily love the trade, but regardless of that, we have here them focusing on defense, the Portland Trailblazers, as they were 23-18 in the second half of the season. So there is a real reason to think that the Trailblazers could compete. I thought they might sneak into that 10 seed at the end. Instead, they fall just short. I have them taking Carter Bryant. The San Antonio Spurs pick is in. Adam Silver is announcing it right now. The San Antonio Spurs, with the number 2 overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft, have selected Dylan Harper, guard from Rutgers. The other one that we kind of knew was going to happen. We're going to break down this fit because I don't really love it. I love Dylan Harper as a player. I think he's a guy that's going to be an instant star in this league. But what Dylan Harper brings to the table is what they got in De'Aaron Fox a little bit. And it's hard to get minutes for him, for Fox, who you just traded for and paid. He's going to need minutes. For your rookie of the year, reigning rookie of the year in Stephon Castle, he's going to need minutes. It is just a very interesting fit. And I think he's by far the second best player in this draft. I don't disagree with this pick at all. I just think maybe a trade packaging this pick might have benefited them more instead of adding more depth to that backcourt where they already had a lot of really good depth. Overall, I don't mind it. I don't mind this pick. He's going to be that next great player. Dylan Harper is, but I don't really love this fit here. We'll have to see exactly how it goes. Now we're on to pick 3 in the draft, and I will say this is where we could see a trade. There's been rumors of the Hawks potentially looking to trade up here for that pick that the 76ers have. The 76ers could do a lot with this pick. Like I said, I think they're pretty close to potentially competing in the East this year with all the injuries that went down over there in the playoffs. But I also don't think Philly trades this pick. We'll have to see, though. We've got a couple more picks to get through in our lottery of our mock draft. We left off going over Carter Bryant at pick 11. At pick 12, the Bulls are on the clock, and I have them taking Kasparis Yakachunas out of Illinois. This feels like a Bulls kind of guy. There's been rumors of the Bulls potentially selling. I've heard rumors of guys like Kobe White potentially being on the move for this team. I don't love that thought there. It hasn't necessarily been great in Chicago the last couple years, but I think getting a guy like that out of Illinois, he's going to be able to help dish out, and he's not a guy I love necessarily. He can come in and be a solid number 2 point guard for you, a solid depth piece, but there's not a lot of knockout pieces, I think, left at pick 12. So maybe they look to trade this package to move up in the draft a little bit, or maybe get a player later on. But the Bulls, this feels like a very much Bulls guy. So I'm looking at it here. I like that pick for them. At pick 13, nearly rounding out the lottery, the Hawks, they select Igor Demon out of BYU. He's probably the best player left on the board. His shooting right there is what helped BYU be a sort of Cinderella team this year for a year that did not really have any kind of Cinderellas. Overall, I like what Demon brings to the table for the Hawks. They went out and they traded for Kristaps Porzingis. Because of that, I don't think they go and draft a center this high. There are a couple guys that I think they might be able to grab, but I think right now, after trading for KP, having Clint Capella on there, that's a pretty solid depth at center. I know they need center. Trae Young also needs a backcourt mate. So getting a guy like Demon out of BYU to help spread the floor a little bit more, to help, get more touches to these guys, help facilitate the ball a little bit more. I really do like that pick. He's going to be able to help out on the defensive side a little bit. But Demon, near the end of the lottery, goes to the Hawks out of BYU. And finally, ending out the lottery, my final pick in our mock draft here, our lottery mock draft that we did, I have the Spurs, their second pick, selecting Colin Murray Boyles out of South Carolina. He's a guy that on some people's big board is all the way up at number 7. What he was able to do at South Carolina this year was really good, right? He is an offensive engine. What he does as a forward is going to be huge for this Spurs team. You talk about getting more depth. They address the backcourt. They address the backcourt over with that number 2 pick, selecting Dylan Harper just now. Now you addressed more depth in a spot that you desperately needed it in the front court. I like this pick a lot. Colin Murray Boyles finishes out our mock draft here, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think of this mock draft? Go and throw that comment in the chat. I'll get to it as soon as I possibly can. We're going to take just a quick break here. When we come back, we turn our attention over to some trades going on in the NBA, and we'll keep you updated on the live NBA draft that is currently going on. The Sixers on the clock right now. We'll be right back here on the Triple Threat Show.
show you. Love you. So I can show you. Love you. So I can show you.
Welcome back to the Triple Threat Show. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over our NBA first-round lottery mock draft, as well as updating you on the draft that's currently going on. When we were on break, VJ Edgecombe was selected by the Philadelphia 76ers. We're 3 for 3 on our mock draft right now. Edgecombe, a guard out of Baylor, is one of the most exciting prospects in this draft. When I tell you someone can jump out of the gym, it is him. He is the most athletic player in this draft right now. He was the freshman of the year in the Big 12 this year. Lots of one-and-dones here. He is a guy that is going to add a lot of depth, pairing up with Tyrese Maxey, with Jared McCain in that in that backcourt over there. That is a Sixers team that I think is very, very dangerous in the East now. Charlotte, the Hornets on the clock, could go a lot of different ways, but we're going to keep our discussion here in the NBA. We're going to talk about lots of trades. Since we last were live, we have seen trade after trade after trade after trade in the NBA. We're going to start off in the Celtics side of things because they have been busy. When I say busy, they have moved out of the second apron. That was their goal. New ownership. And with Jason Tatum going down, they would like to move off of that big tax bracket with the new CBA, and they've officially done it. They moved off of Drew Holiday. We touched on that a little bit when we were breaking down that Blazers pick, but they trade him to the Portland Trail Blazers, the same team that traded him to the Boston Celtics just a couple of years ago in a redirect from the Damian Lillard trade. That is a really interesting one. Obviously, for the Celtics, they're just trying to cut salary. And this is one that makes sense. Drew Holiday is 34. He's got a 4-year contract. He's going to be 38, making over $30 million. And that is not really what you want to see when you are a team that is already very expensive, trying to win championships. A guy that's making that much money on your roster seems like a black hole. The fact that they were able to move off of him so early and get a guy like Anthony Simons is really good. Now, Simons is an expiring contract. He is incredible on offense. He is a spark plug offensively, but he does have a lot of defensive weaknesses. And that's the big thing. With the Celtics, you can hide it a little bit because you have so many great defenders. But losing Drew Holiday and replacing him with a guy like Anthony Simons, if you can get him to play a little bit of defense, that is going to be amazing. But that is not an easy thing to do at all. He has yet to prove that he can be a competent defender at the NBA level. Overall, this trade makes a lot of sense for the Celtics, right? I think it's a no-brainer for them, kind of. When you take a look at what goes on with the new CBA, you kind of have to destroy any kind of dynasty that gets built. And it's a shame because of how well built this team was. But I think the more interesting part of this trade is with the Trailblazers, right? They're a team that, as we mentioned, went 23-18 in the latter half of the NBA season. Since January, they were a really hot team, and a lot of that had to do with their defense. They're going to increase their defensive acumen by bringing in Drew Holiday. He's going to help with that ability to move the ball around, to help facilitate that offense a little bit, get more touches for Scoot Henderson, who's going to be able to run the offense, get more minutes for him. I like that. Denny Avdia stepped up huge for them this season. I really do think he's a guy that can be a star. He's someone that moved off from the Wizards. They traded him for a first-round pick that turned into Bub Carrington. I think the Blazers won that trade with everything that it's looked like right now. But the Blazers are in an interesting spot. They're not really in a spot to compete when it comes to the Western Conference, but they said they're going to try to compete. Now, if everything develops and if the Blazers hit on that number 11 pick and it works for them, you have Drew Holiday to be a mentor for their young guys and be a defensive anchor right there when you need him to be. But he's going to age, and it's not going to work out well. Now, he does not want to be in Portland. He has said that. He's not happy, and I understand that. But I think people are giving Portland just a little bit too much hate right now because I think Portland actually a very solid team. I think they could turn it around. I think they could be one of the surprise teams, one of those worst to first kind of situation teams that we see all the time in the NBA. The Pistons last year, these things can change. I like this Blazers team a lot, and I think they're pretty close to being a 8-ish seed in the West. Now, I know the West is incredibly competitive, so it's not going to be easy. You still have a couple teams that also miss the playoffs, like the Spurs, that are going to be trying to find their way in as Wemby continues to develop and get healthier. There are a lot of ways for this to go. I'd like this trade for both sides. I really do. I like it more for the Celtics, but I think it's an interesting thing to watch how the Trail Blazers are going to be if they do decide, like they've said they're going to do, to hold on to a guy like Drew Holiday. But that wasn't the only trade that the Celtics made. The Celtics also moved off of Kristaps Porzingis. This was the move that got them under the second apron. Crucially, I've seen a lot of people saying potentially we see a Jaylen Brown move, but I doubt that happens. They kept him, they kept Derek White, and they're under the second apron, which is massive. They no longer have to pay all those taxes and get penalized in that new CBA. But KP, Kristaps Porzingis, to the Hawks, if he's healthy, which is really the caveat with him, because when he's healthy, he is one of the better players in the league. You saw what he was able to do with the Celtics when they won the championship, despite him missing time for most of that postseason run. He was an X factor over there for a lot of them. He is an excellent defender, a unicorn, like they call him. He is a three-point shooting guy that can also defend the rim like nobody else. That is a really great skill set to have. You pair that up with Trae Young, who's one of the best passers in the league, and if he can stay on the court, that Hawks team is going to be dangerous. I don't think that this is a move that the Hawks make if they don't believe he can stay healthy, but still, it's an expiring contract. They didn't have to give up too much to get him, only Georges Niang, which, it could hurt. But I like this move for the Hawks. The Celtics, obviously, they get off of that second apron. Good for them. The Nets are just in there to get another pick. They now have 5 picks in this first round, which insane. And I'm curious what they're going to do. Could we see a potential trade with those 5 picks for a guy like Giannis? The Nets have their first pick at number 8. Could we see them package a lot of it so that they could get a great player? They are the only team in the NBA this year with any kind of cap space. So if there are any major free agents, which most of these free agents are opting into their deals with these teams, we could see them potentially all go to the Nets, and the Nets could turn it around quickly. This is their moment. I don't think it's going to happen. The other massive trade that took place was between the Wizards and the Pelicans, 2 teams picking 6 and 7 in this year's draft. They swapped guards. Jordan Poole goes from the Wizards to the Pelicans in exchange for CJ McCollum, Kelly Olynyk. A couple picks are swapped in there. Late round picks are swapped in there as well. Jordan Poole is a really interesting and polarizing guy. He is a guy that when he's consistent, which you have seasons where he's on and seasons where he's off, when he's on, he is an excellent player, an excellent playmaker, and he's an excellent decision maker. But he does get times where he gets a little lackadaisical, where he loses control and where he just starts to shot chuck a little bit. You get the Jekyll and the Hyde with him. I like him a lot. He's a fun player to watch, and he's a fun player to have. I'm not sure he's going to stick over there with the Pelicans. I do like the idea of combining him with Zion, but I don't know if either of those guys are going to be on that roster when the season begins. It's going to be a really interesting thing to watch what the Pelicans do. Real quick, before we break down the Wizards side of things, the pick is in for the Charlotte Hornets. They have selected Con Knippel, the wing out of Duke. There we go. 4 for 4 right now on our draft here. The Charlotte Hornets go and get maybe the highest floor player. He's an excellent shooter, Con Knippel is. He's going to pair very nicely with LaMelo Ball if he's going to be able to stay healthy. He fits a need that they have over on that wing over there with Brandon Miller. I like this pick a lot for them. I think this is probably the best option on the board. Number 4, the second player out of Duke already. Half the picks in this draft have been from Duke. Congratulations to Con Knippel. Congratulations to the Hornets for getting their guy here. The slide for Ace Bailey continues. This is a spot to watch for him. The Utah Jazz picking 5th. Maybe we see Ace Bailey go number 5. But for the Wizards, this trade with Jordan Poole is very interesting. This is a haul that a couple years ago would have been a lot better. You get Kelly Olynyk, who has been a thorn in the side for the Wizards for a very long time, basically his whole career. He had maybe his best game of his career against the Wizards in Game 7 when he was on the Celtics in the playoffs, second round over there. Hurts my soul a little bit over there. But you also go out and you get CJ McCollum, who I still think has a little bit of juice left. He's going to be a solid decision maker, a great shooter, and I do like what he brings to the table as far as a mentor role. He's the president of the NBA Players Association, which, can be a good thing and a bad thing, but it shows that he's got that leadership skill. And this is a very young Wizards team. This is a young Wizards team with a lot to grow on. If you can get a solid veteran in there that can teach them the right way to play, that can teach them the work ethic and the skills they need to be successful in the NBA, I think this is a move that helps them. I don't think this is a move that moves them into the playoff kind of situations on its own. But you get to move off of a couple contracts. You free up a lot of money if you're the Wizards for next year for free agency, if there's going to be any available free agents that could potentially test the market. And you get to, add just a little bit more to this team. They're going to be a little bit better. They're going to continue to improve, and a lot of it does depend on who they pick coming up in just a couple minutes here at number 6. But I like these trades. This trade season is in full gear. I don't expect it to be it. I expect a couple more trades before the night is over. We could see a couple of those coming now. I'm surprised we haven't had any yet, if I'm being completely honest. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, some major news out of the NFL. There was a collusion case, a double collusion case going on with Roger Goodell and the NFL Players Association and the NFL owners, talking about what's going on with the guaranteed contracts. We'll talk about that and much more coming up next here on the Triple Threat Show. Welcome back to the Triple Threat Show. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Wednesday, June 25th. Happy NBA Draft Day. The pick is in for the Utah Jazz. And here it goes. Ace Bailey out of Rutgers goes number 5 overall to the Utah Jazz. This is an interesting spot. The Utah Jazz weren't necessarily on his list. His list included the Wizards and included the Nets. They select Ace Bailey here, the Utah Jazz do, and I like this fit a lot. He wants to go to the spot where he can be a star, he can be that number one option on offense. You have that in Utah, but he does have to go over and play in Utah. It's not necessarily maybe his favorite spot, and you can tell the look on his face right now. He's a little bit confused, he's a little bit not excited, but I do like this pick for Utah a lot. I think he's going to be able to develop there a little bit under GM Danny Ainge, but he wanted to be a star. This is what he gets. He goes to the worst team in the NBA. That's how it goes. They were worse than the Wizards, which kind of flew under the radar a little bit, but they get that spot. They get their guy. A really great offensively talented player. A person that I honestly was hoping the Wizards were going to get at 6, but we'll have to see where they go. Jeremiah Fears and Trey Johnson still on the board for them. We will keep you updated on the draft, but we have to talk a little bit about what's going on in the NFL. There was a bombshell report that came out today surrounding the collusion situation in the NFL. This all stems back a couple of years ago surrounding Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson is a very polarizing figure, I will say, in the NFL circles, right? He, of course, has his off-the-field issues, but what he has been on the field since coming over to Cleveland hasn't been that great either. He signed the most lucrative deal, a 5-year, $230 million deal that crucially was fully guaranteed. That was the first time that had ever happened in the NFL. In NFL contracts, as opposed to NBA, MLB, just about every single major sport contract, NHL contracts, the NFL contracts are not fully guaranteed. They're guaranteed up to a certain point, but the rest of it is incentives, making sure you play the full contract. Now, reportedly, there was a secret board in the NFL owners meeting in 2022 that said, hey, let's not fully guarantee contracts. And the ruling in court said that there wasn't enough evidence to prove that this was coming from above and there was collusion, but this is something that was said. There's evidence that it was said, and there's evidence that clearly no other team has given out a massive contract like that. Now, the players that are being targeted in this, the players that are most often associated with not getting those guaranteed monies are a couple of quarterbacks, right? Lamar Jackson, his saga, first of all, looks a lot different with this point of view here, that there was a little bit of collusion going on. He wanted fully guaranteed. That's why nobody was going to sign. That's why the Ravens let him test out free agency, sort of. He ended up signing with the Ravens for a big deal, not as much guaranteed money. Kyler Murray also got less money due to his deal. He did not get his fully guaranteed contract. The other one that's out there, and to a lesser extent, is Russell Wilson. Now, at the time, Russell Wilson was consensus top 10-ish quarterback in the NFL. This was right at the time where he got traded to Denver from Seattle. And when that happened, Denver was put into Super Bowl conversations. I put him into Super Bowl conversations because you had a guy like Russell Wilson with that pedigree and with what he had been able to do over in Seattle. We all know how that goes. But the contract at that time, the massive $242 million contract that he got, not all of it guaranteed, could have been fully guaranteed with the precedent that was set. And we see it happen in sports all the time. And players have wanted fully guaranteed contracts for a long time. There's always the battle between the NFLPA and the NFL owners. That happens in that CBA negotiation, and that's something that the NFL players have really wanted, have been really pushing to go out and get. Instead, there's this collusion. And people talk about collusion all the time. They do. People talk about it with Colin Kaepernick. People talk about it with all these. But this one is confirmed. This one is confirmed, unlike those other ones that I can say most likely happened, but they are absolutely confirmed there. So it's something that is not great, but also I don't know how much this affects because there's people that are saying this has affected hundreds of billions of dollars, which maybe that's true. At most that we can prove with 100% certainty, it's affected hundreds of millions of dollars, not hundreds of billions of dollars. But you also have to think what the trickle down might be, right? What is this kind of precedent that was set with that Deshaun Watson contract if nothing was set? We see obviously most likely quarterbacks getting signed to fully guaranteed contracts, but do we see running backs? Do we see wide receivers? Do we see defensive ends? Do we see linebackers, et cetera, get signed to these massive contracts? If so, you're looking at a much, much bigger payout that was affected. At the end of the day, I don't know how big of a story this is. It's always a big story when you uncover something, right? When you uncover something that was not supposed to see the light of day, when a powerful organization doesn't want you to see something, it always is a big story. There's no doubt about that. But what we don't necessarily know is how much this truly affected players in the NFL. Agents, I'm sure, would push for it, but if owners were just hard-pressed to say no, you have to get a deal done eventually. You can't hold out forever. We've seen players hold out to try and get theirs. It hasn't necessarily worked. The one big holdout situation, of course, famously, Le'Veon Bell. And maybe that had more to do with him being a running back and getting to a little bit of a higher age, past that magical number 30 age that you get, but that happens with running backs. But when it comes to it, I just don't know how much this actually affected things. I do think that this is something that should be talked about because they should be held accountable. They shouldn't be allowed to come together. The Browns decided to break precedent and do a fully guaranteed contract. I think if other players of other teams want to get that fully guaranteed contract, they shouldn't be told, actually, we're doing a thing where the whole NFL is not doing that. And that is a little bit sketchy. It's a lot sketchy, actually. It's not great. But what we do see come out of this, what we do see change for this is not much, honestly. And in the next CBA, maybe we see something more change, but that's going to be further on down the line. We're going to have to wait on that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think that this is actually a big deal? Because I'm in the middle of processing this, and honestly, I'm kind of on the side where I don't think it would have affected things too much. I don't know. Even at the time of giving that contract to Deshaun Watson, I wasn't in the camp where I thought this was going to be given out to a lot of different players. That was a bombshell of a deal, and it didn't work out immediately. Now, if it did work out, potentially we see more of that. But I just don't really see it working out in the long term, especially with the way that Deshaun contract aged. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though, because I don't know how the public is taking a look at this, but we're going to take our final break here. When we come back, we finish off our coverage of the NBA draft, and we take a look at some contract extensions that have been reported in the NBA. We'll be right back here on the Triple Threat Show. Welcome back to the Triple Threat Show. I appreciate all of you guys sticking with me here on a beautiful Wednesday, June 25th. It is NBA Draft Day, and pick 6 is officially in. The Washington Wizards have selected Trey Johnson, guard out of Texas, the SEC Freshman of the Year, one of, if not the best shooters in this draft. That is an excellent get for them. They moved off of Jordan Poole. That is going to be hither the Jordan Poole replacement. He averaged nearly 20 points on 40% from 3 last season. It is maybe the best shooter in this class. Another young guy that's going to help spread the floor for them. They needed more shooting. That was the thing that really hurt them. Bub Carrington put up a lot of shots. A lot of the Wizards were just inefficient from 3. They have these guys that can shoot, but getting a guy that can space the floor, get to his spots, off the dribble, off screens, on his own, catch and shoot, all of this stuff. He is just an incredible shooter. He's got a good handle, and he can pick and pop from just about anywhere. That is the most important thing. Trey Johnson goes number 6 overall to the Washington Wizards, one of the best shooters in this class. We're going to finish off our show going a little bit over some big contracts that we're giving out in the NBA here over the last couple of days. Of course, there were a lot of massive contracts, extensions especially, given out, and we're going to start off with the Mavericks because they have done a very good job keeping their core intact. The Mavericks, of course, made a shocking trade, maybe the craziest trade I've ever seen in my entire life, any sport, anything, really, just the craziest trade I've ever seen, trading Luka Doncic away to the Lakers. They got back Anthony Davis, which for the next couple years is going to be good if they can stay healthy, but they're doing everything they can to keep that team together. You have Anthony Davis. You have now Kyrie Irving signing an extension. He's opting out so that he can sign this extension, staying with the Mavericks to avoid free agency. This is a big spot for them. I think it's huge that they're able to keep him around. Of course, he's dealing with that injury. He's not going to be able to come back until the playoffs, most likely. But when he does come back, you're going to have him. You're going to have Cooper Flag. You're going to have Daniel Gafford, who they just gave a $60 million extension to. You're going to have, of course, Anthony Davis, and you're going to have Derek Lively, not to mention Klay Thompson, who's still there. This is an expensive team, no doubt about it. But this is also a team that is going to be competitive in the Western Conference. They made it to the Western Conference Finals, to the finals, the NBA Finals, just 2 seasons ago. A nightmare season for them last year that saw them trade away their star. But you can see the vision with this team, if only for the next few years, while Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving, if Kyrie can return and play good basketball coming off of that ACL tear. Not a good look for them. Still would have been better if they had Luka, but don't have him. They've got to move on, and I still think they've done a really good job. The other big extension that took place, Fred VanVleet was extended in Houston. The Houston Rockets have made a lot of moves. Of course, they traded for Kevin Durant, and that's something that I think has made them into a true contender over there. Kevin Durant now paired up with Alperen Şengün, paired up with Amen Thompson, paired up with Fred VanVleet, getting a guy like Tari Eason to stay, Jabari Smith Jr. to stay, Reed Shepherd to get more playing time. When he was on the court, he was a knockout shooter. But these are the guys that you were able to hold on to, which is insane. I thought the Suns would at least get one of Jabari Smith or Tari Eason or Reed Shepherd. Instead, you hold on to all of them. You give up Jalen Green, which is a guy that they wanted to give up because he hasn't really developed into that offensive weapon, which was their issue. They were the number 2 seed because of the defense. They didn't have a scorer. Now they have Kevin Durant. They hold on to Fred VanVleet, who, despite being maybe their second best scorer behind Jalen Green last year, is going to be that veteran leadership. They moved off of Dylan Brooks in that trade. He was a huge culture setter for that team, and that's something that's going to sting. But keeping Fred VanVleet in there, bringing in Kevin Durant, I think that's going to do a lot for them. And this is a team that I think might be the second best team in basketball next season with the way that everything is going. Now, there are a lot more extensions to come in the NBA and a lot more trades to come. There's a lot of teams that I think are still going to have to move off of some players, including Giannis Antetokounmpo, and he's the next guy for me that is there to watch. We're not seeing a lot of trades in this draft, although I think this Brooklyn pick is one that we could see some trades go up for. The pick is in for the New Orleans Pelicans here really quickly. The Pelicans select guard Jeremiah Fears. This is probably the best player left on the board. They just take best available. Again, this is a Pelicans team that pretty much is selling everything right now. This is a Pelicans team that is moving off of just about everyone. They bring in Jeremiah Fears, who can play shooting guard next to Jordan Poole. He can be the primary ball handler. You have a really solid backcourt right there. In the front court, you have Zion, potentially, if he's going to stay there, if they don't trade everybody away. And this is a Pelicans team that I think is pretty solid. They moved off of Brandon Ingram. They're not necessarily going to be a play-in level team, especially with the moves that the Spurs and the Blazers are making, and they were behind both of them, so I doubt they make a jump up despite if they are healthy at that point. But I like this pick for the Pelicans a lot. I think we're getting to the point where now we can start to see some surprises in the draft. These top 7 prospects, I think, were pretty much set in stone as the top 7 prospects. They went in a pretty reasonable order. We had 6 of the 7 right here. We just swapped Trey Johnson and Ace Bailey with the Wizards and the Jazz there. But I like this draft. I like the way this draft is going. Jeremiah Fears, a really, really good shooter and facilitator for them coming out of Oklahoma. I'm a big fan of this move, but I would love to hear your thoughts. And thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to our revival show of the Triple Threat Show. We will be back every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, going over all of the biggest news in sports. On Friday, we're going to break down the NBA draft. We're going to break down what Aaron Rodgers said, that he most likely is going to retire after this season. We'll talk about both of those things and much more then. Thank you so much for tuning in. You guys have a good one. Bye-bye.